All right, let's get started.
Yeah, no, we don't have any. Okay.
So last time we talked about a couple things, right? We talked about customer creation, and we talked about the concierge MVP. So what's the concierge MVP?
Not building out all the automated features, we're just doing it by hand.
Okay, and why would we want to do this?
Learn more about the customer and see what exactly we need to, I don't know.
Okay. And what are some maybe issues that customers might bring up where they wouldn't feel comfortable with the concierge MVP?
If they need it to be like done as soon as they submit it.
No, not quite.
Maybe if you're able to, I don't know, if they're submitting credit card purchases or some like secret data, I don't know.
No?
No.
Okay. Well, the reason that some people might not want to have a concierge MVP is because they either expect to have a full product, like all of the service, or they might want to have even more features, or they might be like, this design isn't what I expect, I want something that's fully finished, right? So yes, there are some folks who may not want to go down this concierge MVP path and might actually want to see a finished product. But there's always a handful or more people who actually, will submit to this because they just have a great pain, right? So we showed some examples like Airbnb last time where there were just not enough people or not enough hotel rooms, so people were willing to sleep on air mattresses in order to have a place to stay and attend a convention, and that's sort of how Airbnb came about. So once again, public service announcement, except this time with a link to the sessions to sign up. So for you all, if you want to sign up, it's going to be during my usual Wednesday office hours, but it'll be from 3 to 6, and it'll be at the Do Hatch. Professor Mundell will also be volunteering. So if you can't make it or can't make it during my time, I'm going to try to offer some more hours that he's available on there. You can come with your group or you can just send one. It's up to you. And there'll be 20-minute slots. If you know anybody else that's applying for the Startup Challenge, let them know. It's definitely open to whoever's going to be participating in the community, and it'll also give you a chance to learn from them. All right. Any other questions about this or the Duke Startup Challenge? It's coming up close. Okay. All right. So today we're going to talk about a few more things related to customer creation and demand. And before we get into the agenda, though, I know many of you like the format of us, or rather of me lecturing less and having an exercise. So we will continue with that format. I'll do like 30 to 45 minutes of lecture, depending on how much material there is to cover. And then we'll do a brief exercise, and I'll let everybody who, that we have time for get up and present. This time we're going to just do the same exercise that we did last time because we didn't get to all the groups, and hopefully that will give enough people a chance to learn. So going back to the agenda then, we'll talk about how to collect feedback, because I know a number of you might have started doing your customer interviews and either you're not getting any feedback, right? People just aren't answering your surveys, or people are answering but you're not sure where to go next. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll also talk about how you can use some of these customer interviews and some of the usability tests, and even if you go down the path of a concierge MVP, how can you start to craft what's called a customer case study so that you can even attract more early adopters. And then we'll get into some more demand creation activities. So, as usual, this is where we're at. We've talked about discovery, we've talked about validation, we've talked about customer creation. We're going to talk a little bit more about it. So, the one thing I want to bring up about the questionnaire is sometimes people get too bogged down in thinking, well, I've got to have it be perfect, or if I get a lot of rejections, then it probably means that people aren't interested in my product, right? That doesn't always have to be the case. You are going to witness a funnel. So last night, I went to this event called Next, and one of the guys there said he had sent out 100 emails to people that he thought would be interested in his product. Out of that, 22 responded, and out of those 22, 4 became paying customers. So right there, you see that's pretty good. That's a 4%, right, conversion rate, which isn't typical. But in his case, he did some things to make sure he qualified his customers. So don't think that just because you get some level of rejection, or even if nobody responds, that means that you shouldn't go down this path. What you might have to try to do is change your approach to the questionnaire. So just sending people an email might not be the right approach. You might have to knock on doors or, kiss babies or do whatever it's going to take in order for them to answer your questions. So keep that in mind as well as you're coming up with the questionnaire and as you're distributing it. So when we talk about, giving out the questionnaire, obviously we're going to start by identifying who we think are prospects, right? Prospective early adopters. Then we expect to send the survey out. Then we're hoping that we're going to get some number of responses, right? But the key thing to think about are two things. The first is who didn't respond, right? So if we sent out a survey to 100 people and only 20 people responded, why did the 80 not respond? And is there a way to maybe give them a call, or do we say, okay, that's all right, that's what we expect? And so it's important to think about why those folks might not be responding. And one of the tactics is to maybe do a follow-up and ask them, hey, are you even the right person to answer this? Maybe there's somebody who's better. Would you mind forwarding it? You might even need to say things like, this isn't obviously a sales pitch, and you can even play the student card that this might be for a class, or this is an experimental product, right? You can say all these things to hopefully get them to respond. Then when you think about who did respond out of the group, it's important to look at all the common attributes, because what you'll start to notice is that there are some patterns. And then it's a matter of not only figuring out the patterns, but taking it a step further and then seeing how you can go out and find more people like that. So to give you an example, a few years ago I did a direct mail campaign. And usually direct mail, really, really low response rate, like hardly any people ever respond to this. We sent out like 600 or something like that postcards. We got 3 responses. That's a pretty low percentage. However, I did a couple things. So the first is we did some geo-tracking. So we knew exactly where we had sent the cards to. We knew who was redeeming the promo code from that card. And then we could go and see, out of the 3 that redeemed it, where they had come from. And when we looked, we actually noticed that all the people from really, really tiny towns were the ones that were responding to this postcard. So our theory was that we probably, if we sent it to the larger cities, people were just throwing them away because they're just like mailers, right? Like you get it in West Village, you just throw them in the garbage. So nobody looks at these. But in the small towns, they're like, hey, somebody sent us mail. We're going to actually look at this, and we're going to do something about it. So sometimes you have to think about what is it that's unique in the situation, and then, obviously dial that up in the next time. So always think about why did people respond. Don't just be like, yeah, we got a response, right? Dig in a little bit deeper. Hopefully you get more than one so that you can start to identify some patterns. So, like I said, why are people responding? Now, when you're drilling down further, right, it's easy to kind of go down a rabbit hole and then get really, really specific about the end customer, and that's okay. You can always then figure out what are some general patterns that aren't necessarily so detail-oriented, right? It's not like we had to figure out, well, these are the rural cities and this only has a population of 200,000 or 2,000. We didn't get that, level of granularity, but we knew that they were clearly not the big cities. So don't necessarily drill down into every specific detail, because sometimes that can take you off the path that you're on. The other thing that we don't necessarily always do a good job of is, even in the folks that we get as early adopters, asking them for referrals. Because the truth is that a lot of times if people feel really great about your product, sure, they'll be the early evangelists, they'll get out and talk about it, but sometimes they won't. They might just be really busy people, right? So it's important to kind of nudge them along the way and say, hey, who else do you think would benefit from a product like this? Okay? And to even get them to possibly give you some contact information, but keep on the path of referrals, because a lot of times that's sort of the snowball effect that you're going for in the initial stages, rather than trying to cold call more and more people. Now, the other thing is, as you're doing your customer interviews, and as you're doing usability tests, and then at some point when you do give them your product or your concierge MVP, right, they're going to use this product, and they're going to have some level of satisfaction, right? And they're going to even possibly use it in some unique ways, right? Like I told you about the case of food on the table, right? The woman that was using it was a mom. She wanted to spend more time with her kids, not at the grocery store. So it's important to keep track of these case studies and try to get some testimonials from customers as well. Once again, this doesn't have to be like you bombarding them, but you want to do a second level of interviews with these folks to understand why they chose to use your product And, on top of that, who they are, right? Craft the persona once again. So, when you're doing this customer case study, you first want to think about, who are these people, and not just like, oh, this is some woman that comes to the grocery store. No, she's clearly, a mom. Why did this person pick this service from all the other potential services that are out there, or maybe from some alternatives or some substitutes? There's a reason that people pick it, right? So they might say things like, oh, I really liked the simplicity, I thought this was a great company, or I really had a desperate need, right? Try to pinpoint the reasons and ask them why they chose to do business with you. And then finally, think about how the product has benefited them. Okay, so in this case, for example, it's benefited this woman, food on the table, by not having to go to the grocery store, so saved her a trip. Right? Similarly, how is your product benefiting them? And get them to say it in their own words. So when you do this, you're actually creating a narrative, right? And you're not even having to create the narrative. They're doing all the work for you. But you can leverage that in a number of ways. Okay, so before we get into the example, the first way that you can leverage it is, once you start putting this out there, this case study, other folks are going to see this person and then be like, wow, I'm just like this mom. I'm also a mom, right? Or I'm a dad, whatever. And I also have the same need. So it's actually more like, like attracts like. This is why we do customer case studies. Obviously, we want to make sure that our customers are okay with this. Some people are like, I don't want my face on it, or I don't want my name on it, or whatever. So, figure out the customers who would be willing participants. So I wanted to give you an example here. This guy's name is Sanjay, and his persona is that he's an international student and a software engineer. And he took my last class on lean product development. And we decided to showcase him as a case study because we thought it was pretty cool. Like, we wanted to get more international students, we wanted to get more software engineers, so we decided, hey, let's use Sanjay. So we just put up, a picture of his with a little testimonial that says, I took a lot away from the course. If I hadn't come, then my product would have still been an idea in my head. Okay, so clearly, it's nice to have his testimonial, his face on it, his first and last name because he was a willing participant. And then, we give the full story of why he chose to join the class, what he was working on at the time, how during the class he really, made a lot of progress. And in doing this, we actually started to attract more international students because they all identified like him. Okay, even women, who might not, they weren't that picky. They were like, oh, this guy's from like my city. I want to participate. So think about how you can create a persona from the customers that you have today, even if it's just a handful, right? A lot of times that can be even more powerful than just saying, hey, this product benefits X, Y, and Z, right? Show them who you're already servicing. That can be a stronger connection. So sometimes we have multiple segments that we're servicing, right? It's not always just one particular person. So here's another example with BusyBee. We've got this page, Who Uses BusyBee? And this is actually one of the pages that a lot of people come to. I don't know if it's because of search results or what, but I think it's because we list like a lot of different businesses that we service. So a lot of times people will come here and they'll say, oh, I'm just like Misty. I'm a private instructor. Or I'm just like this guy Jeffrey. I'm a new studio instructor, right? So we dig in and we showcase each of the different user segments. And sometimes you have to do this if you've got multiple people that you're dealing with. And once again, the formula is, how has our product benefited their business, and a testimonial in their own words. Is this making sense? Okay. So, just like I said before, stories of all your existing customers, doesn't matter if they've been around for years or months or whatever, but stories of your existing customers will help you attract more folks, just like them. Now, the other thing that you want to think about as you're getting in the initial stages of product development is there a way to bake in some brand recognition into your product? What do you think I mean by that? Has anybody seen this done before?
On the back of your iPhone?
Sure, like where like when other people see it, they'll immediately identify. So yeah, it's true, like on the back of your iPhone, but is there another product besides?
Well, like the Apple headphones, I guess.
Okay.
Because when people are...
Because when they see it, then they immediately identify it? Okay.
I was going to say, one like Beats by Dre, those headphones. With,
sure.
That one with the logo kind of
Okay.
Even though it's not really the company, I think it became the company logo after people like the design.
Okay.
Or like Java.
Okay. Is
Are
there,
you looking for something less hardware specific?
well, yeah, like let's say you didn't necessarily, see the product. Is there ever a case where people put their branding and it's not necessarily that you see the product?
You mean by not seeing that?
Well, the product's not like in front of you, like the headphones aren't in front of you.
Like advertising.
Sort of. So when you send out emails, right? It says sent from iPhone. That's an example, right? You're not actually like sitting there and looking at the iPhone, right? But they're distributing their branding message, their marketing message through email. So does that make sense? So trying to embed your branding into other channels, right? Other points where it's not necessarily your particular product, it might be side effects of your product. But yeah, certainly within your product itself, it's important to have that branding. Okay, so here's a company. How many of you know Olark? Okay, one person knows Olark. So Olark, two people know Olark. Okay, so Olark is a live chat client, and the way it works is people just copy and paste a little bit of JavaScript on their website, on their home page or landing page, and then it helps because as people come and visit the site, whether it's e-commerce or whatever, customer support can ping visitors, they can answer any support issues, they can try to figure out why somebody might be confused, etc. Now, the cool thing about Olark is that when it came out, they actually built a lot of virality just by being on a number of people's sites, right? They didn't really do anything. They didn't put out a bunch of emails. They didn't do a big marketing campaign. They were just on a lot of interesting e-commerce sites, and then people, immediately started to identify with them and say, hey, I've got an e-commerce site. I think I need Olark as well, right? So there just started to be this little bit of a ripple effect. The other thing that they did was they also, made it so that businesses that were just getting started would want to use them. So they offered, this founder's discount or whatever, in the hopes that this business would obviously grow, would get more recognition. So what was interesting is as the business's traffic increased, right, there were more eyeballs on this little widget, and then of course more people started to also, decide to use Olark. So it created a little bit of a snowball effect. So I just wanted to point that out as an example. Now, obviously you can do a lot of these outbound activities, right, where you're spreading the message either through your product or through customer testimonials, but you also have to think about how you're going to get interest inbound, right? What are sort of the demand creation activities you can do to get people to come to you? And of course, last time we talked about this, we said, well, it's got to be about market adoption versus market share, and really the way to do it is through education. Okay, so that's kind of our primary way of doing it. So when we talk about education, we have to educate not only our customers, but the three other groups that we talked about, the messengers, right? These are the experts, the connectors, and the early evangelists. So when we think about the experts, there is a way to educate them that will work. And so the first is to really, really hone in on what your value proposition is of your product. Because too often experts will say, oh, that product already exists. There's 10 competitors. Why should I showcase you? Or why should I even bother talking to you, right? What's your unique position in the market? So this is another reason, right? Because the whole time, the experts need to only showcase what they think are going to be the up-and-comers, because that's obviously going to, once again, validate their expert status. So think about that as you're reaching out to experts. Why is your product something unique and you think it's going to take off? The second is when you're thinking about connectors, right? You can't just go to a connector and say, hey, introduce me to Richard Branson. Because they'll be like, who the hell are you, right? What are you doing? So it's a little bit more important to think about what are the most relevant connections that you need today, right now, that they can introduce you to, right? Is it that you need an intro to someone that's going to do press for you, or that you're looking for an endorsement, right? Think about how they can also give you those connections that are a little bit more realistic. And then the other part about this is think about how if you're going after a connector, is there a way you could leverage their existing network, right? Is there something that they could offer to their existing network? Not in the sense of like a discount or a promotion, but do they have a network where you also want to tap into that and let those folks know about your product? And then the final thing, which we hinted on last time with early evangelists, is yeah, they're going to go out and spread the message, but the key is to make it memorable for them so that when they convey it, the next person also understands it, whether they're possibly an early adopter or not, right? It could be mainstream. So, just to give you another case study, with Mint, right, one of the key experts that we went after was someone like Susie Orman, and obviously she gives a lot of advice about finances, so why would she want to talk about Mint, right? So we had to make it unique and to present to her why this would be beneficial, why our product was different from a Quicken or a Microsoft Money, and why we'd want to be on her show, or why we want her to at least give a soundbite on her show. Okay, so obviously this takes a little bit of time and finagling to get such a person to talk about you, but it's presenting the unique value proposition. Now, the second thing we did is we went after financial bloggers. And what we did for these financial bloggers is we actually had them put a badge on their blog. And that badge was something like, what's your Mint score, or like how minty are you, or something like that, where, it was basically saying, how much money have these bloggers saved by using Mint. And the other thing is that also, drives traffic back to Mint, right, because it's SEO, it's linking. And then the third, of course, with early evangelists, we were sort of the pioneers, I'd say, when it came to infographics. Not a lot of people had been doing it. I mean, today, 5, 6, 7 years later, everybody's doing infographics. But at the time, it was pretty novel concept, right, of a way of showing information. And so we made these infographics very shareable. We made it so that news outlets could embed them on their site or on their blogs. So once again, we started to make it a lot easier for people to share, and once again, memorable. Okay, so what happens if your segments change? What do you think happens? If you go after a particular segment, you've educated them, spent a lot of time, you've told all your experts, you've told all your connectors, and then all of a sudden you decide, no, this isn't really the right segment to go after anymore. There's not enough people.
Destroy everything.
Did you look ahead to my slide?
Just a hunch.
Keep it friendly, I guess.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So you're basically going to destroy everything. Because why do you think you're going to destroy everything? You're right, but why?
Because all of this does not make any sense with your new product.
Sure, but what specifically?
All these evangelists, all these connectors, all these experts were only experts in this particular field, and they're completely irrelevant in the new field that you're in.
Yeah, but let's say it's not such a drastic change, right? Let's say it's just a minor change, like, oh, we're no longer going to be about budgeting, we're now going to be about investments.
All these changes sound pretty non-binary.
Okay. All right, well, the reason is, remember the definition of positioning? What's the definition of positioning? Really, I didn't talk about positioning enough. Michael, do you know?
Targeting a particular segment.
Well, that's what you do when you position, but what does positioning mean? What do you do when you position a product?
How you described it in terms of your competitors and which particular segment of the market it will be in.
Sure, but you all have fallen prey to this. You talked about the Beats, you talked about the earbuds, right? What have they done?
Created an image.
Yes, created an image, right? So obviously you've created an image with all of these evangelists, with the early adopters, with the way that you've created your product, and now that you've changed segments, you've got to destroy everything. You've got to destroy that image of who you used to be, right? The company or the product or whatever it was. And so this is the reason you have to destroy everything, right? I should have put the eraser instead of when he was the Terminator up there. I don't know if any of you have seen the eraser. Okay. All right, so you've created an image in the minds of these prospects and these customers, and now you've got to obviously work hard to change that. And sometimes it also means not only rebranding, but it might also mean renaming as part of that. Okay? So, now we're going to do our exercise that we did last week again. Or not last week, last time.